Hey, sportsman, John Bergsman here with the Great Lakes Insider Fishing Report, and we're coming to you today from the area Tawas and north to the mouth of the Au Sable River, and we're here today with Captain Gene Curvin from Calypso Sportfishing Charters. And Gene's one of the few charter captains that fishes the open water out of a boat all year long, and then he shifts gears and he takes a boat fishing trips out of a drift boat up in the Au Sable River. And Gene, what do you got for us today for the bite up there on the Au Sable?
Well, the bite has definitely been improving. We're fishing all the way from, we're starting at Foot Dam, and then we're fishing all the way down to the mouth. The Chinook salmon run is basically over. We had a fair bite this fall, but right now the Steelhead and Atlantic salmon has definitely been heating up.
Yeah, the Atlantics have been pouring down coming from the North Country towards you. I know that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that is an excellent fish, and it's nice to see that we're in our 7th year of planting Atlantics in the Au Sable, and to see that we're getting this strong of a return. It's a terrific sport fish to hook into.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that Atlantics don't, unlike a lot of other salmon, they don't run up, spawn, and die, do they?
No, there's actually, they will multiple spawn similar to a steelhead, and they can live up to 7 years. The average Atlantics that we've been seeing right now have been in that 8 to 9 pound range. We had one a couple of weeks ago that was about 11 and a half, which so far that was the largest Atlantic that I've seen. But I'll tell you what, that is an adrenaline-packed fish. It's something where when you hook up, I mean, these things will go airborne. I mean, it's an excellent fighting fish. And then as far as table fare, it's probably one of the finest that we have here in northern Michigan.
Exactly. You know, I'm a kind of a sashimi and a fan of what's it called, sushi. And I noticed that a lot of the upper end sushi restaurants are serving Atlantic salmon on their sushi menu. So that tells you all you need to know about the quality of the table fare. You know, and you mentioned the craziness of the fish. I have hooked up and caught these fish over on the Huron side when I fished the Sunrise side. I've tied into these fish probably a half a dozen times this year, and those fish are literally nuts. They're stupid. They leave the water. They're not jumping. They're cartwheeling. They're doing everything under the sun to get off.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the real exciting points is in a drift boat, the strike is so violent. And usually those fish, when you get that initial strike, before the customer can get the pole out of the rod holder, they've already gone airborne at least once.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a crazy fish.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing right now, all the way through the wintertime, Gene, is your drift boat business is going to get solid, and it's going to give customers tons of action there for both steelhead and Atlantics. And also you mix in a little bit of the native species too, as well as the trout species, don't you?
We really don't see any. There's a few native browns on our stretch of the Au Sable, but other than that, it's mainly what we're going to be seeing is going to be our steelhead and Atlantic salmon.
Well,
we had a little push of Chinooks earlier, but that portion of the run is basically over right now.
And that's really what a lot of people have to understand. That's really what triggers the steelhead run, is when the Chinooks are done spawning, and the steelhead come up basically to prepare for their spawning in the spring, but also to feed on those eggs that are left behind by the Chinook, correct?
Absolutely. The Au Sable River, we actually received the largest steelhead plant in the state of Michigan, which generally I get at least 138,000 steelhead yearlings a year. So what we see in the fall is usually about that first quarter of that plant, or a quarter of our population will be coming in to feed on the Chinook roe, and then they'll basically winter into the system. Some will actually spawn out now. The majority will winter in the system, and then they'll go onto the gravel usually about mid-April.
Well, perfect. So take me through. Somebody signs up and says, hey, you know what, John, that report sounded great. I'm going to call Gene on the phone and get out there in his drift boat with him. What are your basic early season, the next month or two, the 2 or 3 primary presentations that you're going to be putting your customers on there in the drift boat on the Au Sable?
Well, the next, I'd have to say the prime fall season, the big push is usually mid-November, and especially that week of Thanksgiving. We have usually a huge population of fish. Our water temps are where they need to be. We've got good water flow. And with the fish, we're light lining, we're hot shotting the runs.
Okay.
The small body baits. because these fish, once they're done feeding on the Chinook roe, they basically aren't feeding. They're striking out of aggression. And the hot shotting technique, going through the deep runs, I'll tell you what, it's an aggressive, the presentation, you can't beat it. And I'll tell you what, anybody that has ever seen the fish strike, when you watch 9 foot of an ultralight pole just get hammered right around, it's a rush that once you do it once, you're going to be hooked.
Yeah, exactly. So after the hot shotting, what would you say? Floating beads and skein below bobbers?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of, usually once that water temp, when we get down below that 37 degrees is a magic water temp, when we're above 37 degrees, the steelhead are very, very active. When we're below 37, they start getting a bit lethargic. Not to say they won't give you a tremendous fight, but as far as that initial strike, so usually they want to see a slower presentation. Bobbers, a lot of people like using the beads. That's become very popular. A waxworm, with a couple split shot. Just a nice, easy presentation where they don't have to put a lot of energy in to just rise up, hit it, and then drop back down to get out of that current. That's a very, very popular technique going through winter.
Yeah, exactly. And with you, of course, you've been on that river for a million years if you've been on there for a day. So you know where all those deep runs, those cuts, those lay downs are, where those fish will hold up and yard up and give your customers the best opportunity to catch a bunch of fish, or at least hook a bunch of fish. I hesitate to say catching because you and I both know, like you said, when you're in a river circumstance and you get maniacal fish, sometimes batting 50% is about as good as you're going to do.
True, and that's where people, I have my days where I can take 2 customers out and we limit out. So we come off with our 9 trout. That's like hitting the lottery as far as steelhead fishing in the river.
Yeah.
When you look at the lower Sables and old logging river, so when you've got the log jams and deadheads and sweepers, and I mean, there's a lot of obstacles to overcome. Plus, you throw the adrenaline-packed fish on top of it. Yeah, usually if you can land for the novice, if they can land 50% of the fish that they hook up with, they're actually good. It's a good day.
Well, beautiful. Well, we're going to stay on top of these fishing reports with you all winter long, Gene. We're going to talk to you back in a couple, 2-3 weeks again. Gene's information is on the lower part of the screen to all of you guys watching. You can get a hold of him at Calypso Sportfishing Charters. Give him a call. I'm sure he's got a few dates left available. Get out there, experience the sunrise side of Michigan from the Tawas area north to the Au Sable. Gene, thanks so much for the information. We really appreciate it, and we'll be talking to you again soon.
Okay, we'll talk soon, John.
You bet. Bye-bye. Well, just a little bit of a recap. You don't need a lot of recap here. Gene basically covered it all. But we're talking Au Sable River. We're talking steelhead and Atlantics. Right now, hot shotting seems to be the best thing. Hot shotting with things like wiggle warts, small quarter-ounce hot and tots. I know those are good colors. Fire Tiger's an awesome color. Silver and blue, silver and green, silver and orange, golden orange. Golden orange can be one of the best colors on the river, depending if you got a little bit of color clarity issues in the water. And, of course, a little later in the season, slowing the presentation up as that water cools and floating bobbers and beads, bobbers and spawn. And as Jane just pointed out, something I've never tried before, bobbers and wax worms with a couple of split shot to keep it down. Sounds like a great way to spend an afternoon, or better yet, go grab a hotel room there in Tawas, book a couple of days with Gene, have a great time, have a great experience, see wildlife like crazy. The Au Sable's got tons of bald eagles, mink. It's got all kinds of wildlife, foxes. I've seen everything when I've gone river fishing. Hey, it's a great way to get outdoors and spend a weekend. This is John Bergsma with the Great Lakes Fisherman's Digest Insider Fishing Report for Tawas, Michigan, and the Au Sable River region.